All right, so there's a caveat before we get started. The principles that I'm going to talk about are best suited with families where the kids have grown up in a safe home and there's a more secure attachment. Some of the principles might look different if you have a neurodivergent kid as well. All right, so as a parent, sometimes we can feel like we are under a microscope. Maybe it's a family member, a person at church, a stranger at the grocery store who is judging how your children are behaving, right? Well, today, we are going to be putting our own parenting under the microscope. So to do that, first we're going to talk about parenting styles. So who here is ready to hear the formula for how to produce perfectly adjusted children? What? Guys, where's the excitement? Well, too bad, it doesn't exist. Okay. So yeah, there is no parenting style that is guaranteed to produce perfectly adjusted children. I won't lie, that sounds pretty great though. The search for a magical formula, it's one of the reasons why we are inundated with so many different parenting styles, right? So maybe you've heard of the tiger parent that is strict and really focuses on high achievement in school, music, sports. Or the elephant parent that is nurturing and protective. Then there's the panda parent. I love AI. I love the things. She has no neck, her hands are huge. I don't know. Oh, and how can we forget the free-range chicken parent? Okay. So, I made that one up. But there is free-range parenting, helicopter parenting, snowplow parenting, Enneagram parenting, gentle parenting. The list goes on and on and on. All of these parenting styles can lead us feeling confused how to proceed with our own children. Further complicating the issue is that many of these styles have good qualities or have appropriate applications at different stages of life. Let's take helicopter parenting, for example, because it gets a bad reputation. I don't know about you, but whenever my baby started crawling till about 2.5, I felt like I was hovering over them, right? Because they are so good at finding the choking hazards. They like to climb up things. They like to fall down things. And so I constantly was hovering over them. So for a season, my parenting style looked like a helicopter parent. But as my children grew and changed, the way I parented needed to change as well. So, in order to make all of this less confusing, I want to step away from all of the subtypes, and I just want to get back to a foundational level. So we're going to simplify and we're going to focus on Baumann's 4 parenting styles that have been widely accepted for decades. So first, we have the authoritarian style of parenting. Authoritarian parents use strict rules, high standards, and punishment to regulate their child's behavior. Authoritarian parents have high expectations and they're not flexible on them. This type of parenting is high on demand, but low on responsiveness, meaning that while the parent expects a lot from their child, they may provide little emotional support or communication the child needs. This is the my way or the highway parent. They prioritize respect and obedience, often at the expense of their child's feelings. So, there are some pros to this style, right? We have clear boundaries, kids know what's expected of them, and they understand the consequences of not meeting those expectations. Sorry. It's also a fantastic approach in situations where safety is paramount, right? It doesn't matter how much our kid doesn't want to wear a helmet, they wear a helmet. They wear their seatbelt, right? Those types of things are non-negotiable. As you can imagine, though, there are some disadvantages. There can be a lack of emotional development. Children raised by authoritarian parents may struggle with self-esteem and emotional expression. The lack of warmth and responsiveness can hinder their ability to manage their own emotions. There's also a risk of bullying. Since children often parent their mimics behaviors, those with authoritarian parents may be more prone to adopting a similar controlling and domineering approach to their interactions with peers. Okay. We also have the possibility, and I would say likely possibility, of rebellion. The rigid and strict nature of authoritarian parenting can sometimes lead to highly rebellious teenagers or college students. Children may push back against those constraints and expectations that were put against them and seek independence and autonomy in potentially risky ways. So basically, there's a lot of rules, but there's not a lot of intimacy. And let me tell you, rules without relationship often leads to rebellion. All right, sorry, I have so much information, so I have a lot to get through. That paired with me feeling nervous, if I become too much like an auctioneer, like I'm just like, tell me to slow down. Okay, so next we have the permissive parenting style. All right, this style might sound like you allow your children to do whatever you want, but it is more nuanced than that. Permissive parenting is characterized by high level of responsiveness and a low level of demandingness, meaning that the parents are nurturing and communicative, but they often lack the structure and boundaries that children need for balanced development. They're actively involved in their children's emotional well-being. However, they also have low expectations and use discipline sparingly. Permissive parents let their children make their own choices, but might bail them out if it doesn't go well. So there are some advantages to this style. It's very nurturing. Permissive parents often care and support their kids. They create a warm and loving environment. They really are good about open communication, right? They typically foster open lines of communication that encourage their children to express themselves freely. There's also a lot of autonomy. They allow their children significant freedom, which can give kids the ability to really build their independence and their self-expression. But as you can imagine, there are some disadvantages to this style. Permissive parents have a lack of boundaries, right? They struggle to set and enforce rules. This can lead a child to have little understanding of limits and consequences that should result as a part of their bad behavior. Decision-making pressure. Without proper guidance, children may be forced to make important decisions for their well-being before they're ready. This can lead to poor choices in areas like nutrition, sleep, social interactions, as they lack the maturity to navigate these decisions effectively. And then we also see emotional development issues. So children raised by permissive parents may have stunted emotional development. They're rarely denied what they want, which can lead to difficulties in handling frustration, delayed gratification, and developing empathy. These children might grow up to be more self-centered and less equipped to deal with the challenges and setbacks of life. So basically, these children tend to have good self-esteem and they're good communicators, but they can also be impulsive, demanding, and lack the ability to regulate their emotions. We also see that permissive parents can try to control their child's environment. So the child doesn't have to experience those big emotions. So imagine a parenting style that paves the path of least resistance. So you're not just protective, you are intricately involved in making sure your child experiences as little resistance and suffering as possible. So what's the risk of that type of behavior? This is where you give me some feedback. What's the risk of bulldozing those natural consequences, not being able to experience big emotions? What's the risk of that? Yeah. How's that going to help them when they're adults? Yeah. Yeah, if we are consistently bulldozing those things out of their way, the child will likely enter adulthood unprepared. Children need opportunities to feel big emotions and learn how to cope in healthy ways. Children who aren't taught how to process and regulate emotions as children will really struggle to do so as adults. So I would say permissive parenting is pretty short-sighted. They're focused on the here and now while giving little regard to the future. All right, the next one we're going to talk about is neglectful. I don't think that applies to anybody here, right? Neglectful parents don't show up to parenting conferences unless it's court ordered. So I don't think that's any of you guys. Although there is one lady in the back looking kind of sketchy. All right, so uninvolved or neglectful parenting represents an extreme on the spectrum of parenting. Uninvolved parenting combines low demand with low response. Have you noticed a common theme with me talking about demand and response? Okay, I keep bringing that up over and over, but it kind of fluctuates, high demand, low response. So this one, it's low involvement and low response, okay? Low demand, low response. So neglectful parents, they may fulfill the basic needs, but they pay little attention to the child. This is the hands-off approach. There really aren't any rules, but there really isn't any affection either. Practically speaking, this might look like not expressing genuine love, ignoring your child, often leaving children unsupervised, showing a lack of interest in their passions. As you can imagine, this style doesn't really have advantages. So what we're gonna do is just look at some of the characteristics and the impact on children. So the characteristics are, there's minimal interaction, right? There's lack of boundaries. These parents don't set rules or provide discipline. Children are left to their own devices, which can lead to poor self-regulation and decision-making skills. There's also emotional neglect. There's a significant absence of emotional support and nurturing. Children do not receive the affection and attention needed to develop a healthy sense of self-worth and security. And so how does that impact a kid? Well, we see there are emotional and social issues. Children raised in an uninvolved parenting environment often struggle with forming healthy relationships due to the lack of strong emotional bond with their parent. This can lead to feelings of abandonment, loneliness, and difficulty trusting others. We also see that there can be behavioral problems, academic struggles, mental health concerns. I mean, overall, just not the style we want to embody, right? So we have talked about the authoritarian, we have talked about the permissive, we've talked about the neglectful, and then the fourth one we're going to talk about is the authoritative parenting style. This is the parenting style that will train your children to love chores. See? It's in the picture. Can you see it? See how she's smiling, folding laundry? All right, so the authoritative parenting style should not be confused with authoritarian. I wish they were not so similar. So if I say authoritarian right now, like I wish I had a buzzer, you could be like, meh, call me out, okay? Authoritative is what we are talking about right now. So the authoritative parenting style emphasizes a harmonious blend of firmness and nurturance, with parents setting clear rules and expectations while also engaging in open dialogue and explanation. Authoritative parenting is often considered the ideal for its combination of warmth and flexibility, while still making it clear that the parents are in charge. So this one, it's got a lot of advantages, right? We see there are healthy relationships in this parenting style. Authoritative parents promote a balanced and positive relationship between parents and children. By valuing communication and understanding, this style helps to build trust and emotional security. We also see that it generally provides confident kids, right? The approach allows children to express their opinions, participate in the decision-making process, which enhances their self-esteem and independence. Research also shows that children of authoritative parents tend to perform better academically. The supportive yet structured environment encourages children to take responsibility for their learning, leading to higher levels of academic achievement and motivation. All right, what are the cons of this style? Well, it's a lot of work. Oh wait, went too soon. Authoritative parenting demands a significant amount of time, effort, and patience. Parents must be consistent in their approach, actively listening to their children, what Alyssa talked about, and engage in meaningful conversations, what Alyssa and Brendan talked about, which can be challenging amidst life responsibilities. There might also be some judgment that you receive from other people. In certain contexts, authoritative parenting might be less understood, might be seen as too lenient when compared to more traditional authoritarian approaches. All right, so essentially, authoritative parents maintain high standards, but are also responsive and attentive to their child's needs, right? So they are high in demand and high in responsiveness. So they expect a lot from their children, but they also provide a lot of warmth and communication. So the children of authoritative parents know what is expected of them because parents also listen to their children's opinion, but the parents remain the ultimate decision maker. All right, so at this point, I just kind of want to check in, make sure that you're all following me. So We talked about the four: authoritarian, permissive, uninvolved, and authoritative. So if you're a visual learner, on the far left at the bottom, right, that is low demand, low responsiveness. So no boundaries, no expectations, no warmth, no emotional connection. Top left, we're really high in responsiveness. We're great at communicating with our kids. We really care about their emotions and nurturing them. But we're low on demanding, right? We don't have the boundaries. We don't enforce them. We really struggle with maybe that consistency that's needed. Bottom right, we have the authoritarian. You're on it. You got the rules. You enforce the rules. But there's really not the emotional connection, right? So that's where you get the low in responsiveness. And then where we're wanting to be, that top right corner, where we are high on demand, there are expectations, there are rules, we follow through, but also we have those conversations. Kids, it's not just the my way or the highway, you do as you're told. This is why this is the family rule. This is why we're doing this, right? I like to think of the authoritative style as, I care about your heart and I care about your future, if we were gonna put it in layman terms, okay? So, out of those four, we're gonna wad up neglectful, we're gonna throw it in the trash, okay? Because we don't really need to focus on that one. That's not who you guys are. So yeah, that one's tucked away. And so the three that we're kind of gonna more focus on is that authoritarian, permissive, and authoritative. So I want you to imagine a pendulum, okay? So on one side is authoritarian, on the other side is permissive, right? Those are the extremes, and we don't really wanna camp out on either side. Authoritative is more of that fluctuating middle ground, okay? Does that make sense? Okay. So now that we have looked at the four main parenting styles, let's examine how this fits in with our Christian worldview. Healthy relationships, good grades, confident kids, those are great things, but as Christian parents, those aren't the most important things, right? We want our children to love the Lord, to follow Him, to glorify Him with their lives. So the big question for me is, how does the authoritative style align with biblical instruction? Several places in Scripture give specific instructions to parents about how to raise their children. I am going to focus in on Ephesians 6. So Ephesians 6:4 says, "Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in discipline and instruction of the Lord." So let's look at the first part of this verse, right? Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger. When Paul wrote this letter, pagan and Jewish homes were often ruled with an iron fist. Most fathers would have been domineering, with little consideration to the desires and emotional well-being of their children. Paul is communicating that a father's authority over his children does not allow for unreasonable demands. So contextually, the emphasis is on unreasonable or impossible standards. What might that look like in parenting? What are some impossible or unreasonable expectations? Straight A's, yeah, perfect grades. What else? Oh yeah, expecting them to do something that they just developmentally aren't able to do. Marianne, I saw your hand. Yeah. Get your white glove, right? Go check their room, make sure it's spotless, and keep it spotless. Yeah. So I think impossible standards is one of the ways that parents can provoke their children to anger. But it got me thinking, what are some of the other ways that we provoke our children to anger? All right, so we have those impossible standards. I think another way we provoke our children to anger is the ways that we communicate. Is our tone of voice harsh or condescending? When our children have an emotion, do we dismiss their emotion and accuse them of overreacting? Do we use absolute language like, you never listen to me, you always disobey, the always, the never, right? If this way of communication would be triggering for you, you can assume it's going to be triggering for you. For me, oh my gosh, my thoughts all jumbled up. If this way of communicating is triggering for you, you can assume it's going to be triggering for your children. For me, absolute language It's one of those things like I automatically go offline. If you say, you always do this, I'm like, well, you're wrong, because I don't always do this, right? It's not true. And so it doesn't actually help you accomplish what you're trying to talk about. It doesn't help you accomplish anything. All right, so yeah, the ways we communicate can be provoking. Here's a big one: hypocrisy. Hypocrisy provokes children to anger when parents require behavior from children that the parents are not choosing for themselves. For example, not allowing a child to express negative emotions when parents are free to express them themselves, right? There's something that I tell my clients a lot, and honestly, I look in the mirror and I tell it to myself all the time as well. Expectations for your children should not be higher than your expectations for yourself. If I am not modeling emotion regulation, I cannot expect my children to regulate their emotions. While we want our children to be better than we are, we cannot expect our children to be better behaved than we are, okay? I'm gonna say that again because someone needs to hear it twice. While we want our children to be better than we are, we cannot expect our children to be better behaved than we are. All right, another thing that can provoke anger is inconsistency. If you are inconsistent, the child is never sure what the consequences are actually going to be for their actions. If you say, if you don't stop fighting with your sister, I'm gonna take away your toy, but you pick and choose when you actually follow through with that consequence, well, guess what? That's probably gonna provoke confusion, which is gonna provoke anger. Not knowing what to expect or when mom and dad are gonna follow through is gonna provoke big emotions. So while we're never gonna be perfect, we should be striving for consistency in our expectations. That means that discipline and consequences for choices should be consistent as well. All right, so I kind of want to tie this back into the style. So if we go back to the ways that we provoke, the first one being like unrealistic expectations, impossible standards, which style do you think that falls more under? Authoritarian, permissive, authoritative, or neglectful? Yeah, I think so. What about those really unfortunate communication styles that are harsh or using that absolute language? What do you think that would fall under? I think authoritarian, maybe even neglectful. What about hypocrisy? It could be neglectful. I would say maybe authoritarian as well, right? I think the picture we kind of, at least for me, whenever I think of an authoritarian parent, is like the angry dad that's scolding his children. What about inconsistency? Which one would that fall under? Yeah, permissive, right? So we see these different ways that provoke anger. Now I want to look at the second part of the verse, which says to bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. So I don't know about you, but the D word can have negative connotations, and it feels like our culture has turned discipline into a bad word at times. But it's only negative in certain situations. So for example, I'm going to give you some scenarios and you'd let me know how it feels. The Oregon Ducks had a well-disciplined football team, as could be seen in their record. Good, yes. All right, she was disciplined with her money and paid off $20,000 in credit card debt. You go, girl, right? Like, good job. All right, how does this one feel? Hey, boss, sorry I was late. I had to discipline my child. Depending on where you work, that might feel uncomfortable, right? If you show up to the University of Oregon and you're like, reporting for duty. So describing someone as disciplined feels good. Feels like a compliment. When discipline is used as something you are doing, it can feel grating, especially in this culture, I think. But how does someone become disciplined? Well, they might need to actually be disciplined, right? So let's look at what discipline is from a biblical worldview. So I I know Matt talked about discipleship, and I'm assuming that covered discipline as well. I couldn't actually be in here. So I'm going to do kind of a flyover. Did he talk about discipline? Like what discipline looks like? Okay. All right, so discipline from a biblical context is not limited to punishment or correction. It also encompasses instruction, training, and the growth of good habits. It involves setting boundaries, establishing routines, and nurturing self-control. The ultimate goal of discipline is to promote righteousness, wisdom, and a deeper relationship with God. While discipline may sometimes be challenging or uncomfortable, it is ultimately an expression of love and care. Just as a loving parent disciplines their child to help them grow and thrive, God disciplines his children to refine their character and draw them closer to him. The Bible offers various approaches to discipline, aimed at correction, instruction, and spiritual growth. These methods are rooted in love and seek to restore individuals to right relationship with God and others. So here are a few key biblical methods to discipline. Instruction and teaching. Proverbs emphasizes the importance of teaching wisdom and understanding. This involves imparting knowledge of God's word and the principles that guide behavior and decision making, right? So in order to have heart knowledge, they have to have head knowledge too, right? All right, we also see discipline involves reproof and rebuke. When individuals make mistakes, the Bible calls for loving reproof. This involves addressing wrongdoing, pointing out consequences of sinful actions with the goal of repentance and restoration. All right, and then another part of discipline is consequences and correction. The Bible acknowledges the role of consequences in shaping behavior. This may involve natural consequences, such as the effects of one's actions, or corrective measures within the family. So, it is important to note that biblical discipline should always be administered with humility, compassion, and the focus on love. The purpose of discipline is not punishment. Well-disciplined children should not be really well-punished children, okay? Punishment is part of the process, but it's not the purpose. Well-disciplined children, they know what they're supposed to do, and they're able to do what's expected of them in a healthy way. All right, so I know that I'm cherry-picking a verse out of the Bible here to make my point. But in my defense, I feel like authoritative parenting really gleans wisdom from Scripture. Right? If we go back to the first part of the verse, there's an emphasis on being mindful of interactions. We see that we are to care about the emotional well-being of our child. It's high on responsiveness. Within the second part of the verse, there's discipline, which includes instruction and the need for boundaries and consequences. The verse instructs us to be high on demand, right? I really think these concepts line up together. So, up to this point, we have studied the 4 major parenting styles and assessed which one is most aligned with biblical principles. I would imagine most of you sitting here, you already fall into the authoritative camp. But I'm also assuming that you may lean a little more permissive or authoritarian depending on the day, or possibly depending on the child. As we continue to cover this topic, I want to challenge you to think of the ways you are tempted to slide too far one way or the other. I also want to talk about some practical steps we can take to land more in that authoritative style of parenting. So first, let's address a common issue when it comes to discipline. Any guesses on what that might be? What's a common issue when it comes to discipline? Inconsistency? What else? How do you generally feel whenever you need to discipline your child? Are you like, yay? Yeah, our own anger and dysregulation really disrupts the discipline process. So, what we want to do is to de-escalate the big emotions and then change the behavior. Anger generally complicates the issue, so let's look at some preemptive strategies to help you and your child. These strategies will bounce between helping you better discipline while also increasing your concern for their emotional well-being. All right, so first thing, oh, hello. No! What happened to my other horses? Whee! Weird. Okay. Maybe it's in your slides still. Okay, well. All right, so do you have a slide that talks about like getting specific? Yes, okay. All right, so first thing, get specific in your instructions with your kids. Specificity drives accountability. Accountability drives performance. The more specific you are in what you want them to do, the greater chance they will actually do what's expected of them. So for example, if you ask your child to clean their room, you're gonna have vastly different expectations of what that looks like, right? So clearly communicate everything that you want them to do. This is gonna help you set both of you up for success. Success for them to do a good job, and success for you to not be reactive or angry. So in a little kid, that might look like, the first thing I want you to do, maybe their room is a disaster. The first thing I want you to do is get a laundry basket and put all of your dirty clothes in it. Okay. After we do that, I want you to take your laundry basket to the laundry room. And you walk them through. And so, after you do that, come and find me and I'll tell you the next thing to do. And so you give them little instructions. For an older kid, maybe you write down specifically what you want, but be specific. Okay, another thing that can be helpful to remember is little kids struggle with transitions. Give them warnings so that they can mentally prepare for the upcoming change. This gives them time to process their emotions and respond in a more appropriate way. So for example, give 5-minute warnings whenever it's time to turn off the TV, right? So, hey, Timmy, in 5 minutes, we're gonna turn off the cartoon. And don't just say it while they're like entranced. Get their eye contact, make sure they hear you, have them repeat it. What did I just say? Right, make sure they actually hear you. But whenever you give them these opportunities, whenever you give them the warnings, it can really help them to start to regulate their emotions. So if this isn't something you have been doing, initially your child might freak out, right? They're gonna whine, they're gonna cry, they're gonna try to break you. But can you be broken? No. All right, so. Okay, the reality is we've all been broken, okay? We've all been sick, we've all been tired, overwhelmed, okay? I was just trying to hype you up. Okay, so, so give them warnings. I can almost guarantee you, you're not gonna have to do this forever, right? You're not gonna have to go to your 15-year-old and go, okay, in 5 minutes, video games off. Well, actually, you might with video games, but eventually, they're gonna start to learn, okay, how do I regulate my emotions? Okay, did I die when the TV got turned off? No, I'm gonna survive, okay? Another great thing you can do is to plan ahead with consequences for predictable poor behavior. So communicate the expectations and the consequences before they make the bad choice. So for example, if you don't clean your room, you can't go to your friend's house. If you don't finish your homework, no TV tonight, right? Before they even make the choice, lay out the consequences so that they are fully informed and able to make the best choice for themselves. It's a really great skill because it can help with not being overreactive and giving too harsh of a consequence. All right. Another thing you can do is delay the consequence. Let your children live in the mystery of what will happen. Right? Kind of like that old strategy of just wait till your dad gets home, right? And then you're like, ooh. So same concept. Let your children live in that mystery of what's gonna happen. It allows you the opportunity to cool off while you develop the consequence. So if you discipline out of anger, you might be rash in your consequence. So by delaying the consequence, you allow yourself the time to come up with something that you can actually stick with. So say something like, let me figure out an appropriate consequence. I'm gonna have you go to your room so I can have some space and think. You can take minutes, you can take hours, you can call another family. If you're like, I don't know what to do, call another family that you respect and go, hey, what would be an appropriate consequence for this behavior? All right, another one that's really great is, well, I would say better probably for littler kids, is saying things like, uh-oh, as you start to see a behavior, right? Like we're not becoming an angry lava monster reacting, but we're giving that warning shot that a consequence might be coming. So for me and my kids, it's my deep breath, right? Whenever my kids hear this, right? Or whenever they hear several of those, that is their alert, warning, you know? And so it helps them to get their attention, and it lets them know, Mom's feeling annoyed. How do they know I'm annoyed? Well, they know that deep breaths help me stay regulated. So little things like that, like, uh-oh, it consistently kind of gets their attention of like, oh, maybe I'm doing something I'm not supposed to be doing. Another thing that can really help with discipline is coming up with parenting slogans. My absolute favorite parenting slogan is asked and answered. Love it. Chef's kiss. Mwah. Like, it's so good. All right. What does that mean, asked and answered? Yeah. You already asked me? I already answered. But Mom, I wanna. Asked and answered. What? You're the word. Asked and answered, you know? It is such a great slogan because it allows you to not get elevated big emotions in yourself. You're not arguing with your 2-year-old or your 5-year-old. You just go to your phrase, and eventually, your 12-year-old, you go to your phrase, and it really can help you to stay regulated. Another good one might be, it might not be your fault, but it's your responsibility, okay? It might not be your fault that there's pee on the toilet, but it's your responsibility to clean it up, or whatever it is, right? And that's a good thing to take with them in life, right? As parents, there are plenty of things that aren't our fault, but it's still our responsibility. So ingraining in them that sense of responsibility. Another thing you want to keep in mind is don't give idle threats. You've got to follow through, right? This connects back to the inconsistency we talked about before. The not knowing what to expect when Mom and Dad will follow through will probably provoke those big emotions. And then also, this one kind of ties in with the delaying consequences. Make sure the punishment fits the crime. You're never leaving this house again. Well, is that true? No. You're grounded for a year. Is that really going to have the intended consequence you want? Is that actually going to help them learn? So extreme punishments often backfire, fostering resentment and hindering a child's development of self-discipline and emotion regulation, okay? All right, oh, I know why. Because it was supposed to be here. There it is. There's the preemptive strategies, okay. Now it's all coming back to me. All right, this is a big one, okay? If you have tuned me out up until this point, please wake up. Okay, you need to hear this. Please, 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 allow your children to work through age-appropriate situations. Your children need to experience loss, suffering, sadness, anger, failure, all of those big, hard emotions, they need to feel them. If you want your children to be resilient, they must be exposed to the hard parts of life, right? The consequences of not studying for a test, the feelings that come with not making a team, the really big feelings whenever you don't get the popsicle you want, right? If we bulldoze these things out of the way, we are robbing our children of opportunities to grow. We need to be helping them learn how to handle the smaller things so that they can grow to be adults that can adjust to the big things. I read a quote by Dr. LaPera that I really like. It says, teaching children how to regulate their emotions is crime prevention, it's addiction prevention, it's the path to a world where people can disagree and still respect each other. So, I think this quote it's a bit of an oversimplification, but I think there's wisdom in the words. If we don't allow our children to have big emotions, we are robbing them of opportunities to grow and mature. I recently had a moment where I was tempted to be this permissive parent. We were in a hotel, and we neared the elevator. What do you think happened with all of my children? I'm the first to right? They all start vying and like calling dibs. And my littlest one, who's 5, she asked to push the button, but she didn't call dibs first, so. I was so tempted to be like, Judah, just let her push the button. You're 9, right? I'm already like justifying my would-be behavior in my mind. But I did stop myself. And I'll tell you why. This story was really it was a pertinent moment in my parenting. Because in that moment, if I would have done what I was tempted to do, I would have been denying my child the opportunity to work through age-appropriate situations, practice skills, but I was also assuming the worst about her response. And so instead of plowing down that obstacle, I told her, I know you really want to push the button. Next time it'll be your turn. And you know what happened? Nothing. She took a moment, she said, okay, Mom. She wasn't fazed in the slightest. In that moment, she was able to practice sharing, think of others, practice in a healthy response. If I had mowed down that obstacle, I would have robbed her of the opportunity. Notice I responded with empathy while reinforcing the belief that we take turns, care about other people, all that good stuff. So, just a side note, a great way to de-escalate those big emotions in our little ones is to help them understand what they're feeling and acknowledge it, right? You really want to push the button. That makes you feel really disappointed that you can't, right? Feeling understood can really help regulate that anger that might want to be triggered. That's free. You can tuck that in your back pocket. All right, so let's look at another scenario that might seem really small, but is a perfect example of how you can teach your child to handle smaller things so that they can grow to adjust to the big things as they get older. You hand your child a green sucker, and they say, I want the orange one instead. What should we do? But wait, before you answer, can I have a volunteer? Sarah, come on down. Yeah. All right, do you think you can be really whiny and persuasive?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so you're the kid.
Okay.
I'm the mom.
Okay.
Here's your sucker.
I didn't want this color.
You really don't like this color. You wish you could have a different color.
I want it now. What am I supposed to be?
Yeah, this is perfect.
Channel
Yeah.
even right now.
You are really channeling your inner 3-year-old. Okay. What did you say?
I really want now.
You really want the orange
Yeah.
sucker. It makes you feel frustrated that you can't have what you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for
You could, I mean.
Great mom. I love you. Forgive me.
Well, I was expecting a little more pushback because a 3-year-old is a bit more persuasive, right? And so that's whenever you go into those other skills, right? Asked and answered. You already asked if you could have an orange sucker. I said you could have the green one. It's not fair. I want the orange one. Well, you can choose to have a green sucker or you can choose to have no sucker, right? That gives them that sense of like, I have ownership. I have some power here, right? My mom's not just being bossy and mean. I have the choice. And if they continue to throw a fit, it sounds like you're choosing to have no sucker. Okay? All right. All right, so I think we already talked about all that. All right, so last thing we're going to talk about, parenting styles, they're going to fluctuate. Okay, it is natural to use different styles in different situations. When safety is at stake, a parent might use the firm authoritarian style that leaves no room for negotiation, or a parent might put consequences on hold to lean into that permissive approach for a teenager so that they'll call for help whenever they really need it. So kind of like what Alyssa talked about, how whenever they get older, we might be more permissive because we want to create that space to have the hard conversations, to have more opportunities for them to come to us without that fear of judgment and punishment. Our parenting style is going to fluctuate. I have a vivid memory whenever the authoritarian parenting style served me really well. Whenever I was a kid, I think I was like 7 or 8, I was swimming in Florida, and I hear my mom's whistle. I cannot whistle. Anybody here can do the loud whistle? I just can't do it. Anybody? Oh, good, it's not just me. Okay. I hear her loud whistle, and I see her firm, come here, And my first and initially sinful thought was, I wonder if I could pretend like I didn't see that. But I saw her facial expressions, I saw the seriousness, and I was like, okay, I gotta go in. If I don't, I'm in big trouble. And so I immediately left the water, and whenever I made it to the shore, my mom was like, there's a shark fin behind you, right? If I had disobeyed my mom, the consequences could have been so severe, right? I could have lost my life, I could have lost a limb. And so I look back and I'm like, oh, I'm so thankful right, that I listened and I obeyed. And so in that situation, there wasn't the time to talk about how it wasn't a fair request, right? It's not fair. I want to be in the water. No, yeah, like there wasn't time to process my emotions. Instead, my mom needed to enter that authoritarian role, and the expectation was that I would instantly obey. So I think that story kind of gives that picture of there's going to be times whenever we enter in that authoritarian style. I think it also shows there needed to be previous instances where that authority was implemented so that I could learn how to respond. Had I not felt the consequences of the previous poor choices, I also don't think I would have responded as expeditiously as I did. So whenever you're trying to decipher, okay, when do I start to lean more into the authoritarian role, think matters of safety, okay? Also, just as a side note, your facial expressions, body language, tone of voice, they're all tools in your toolbox. If you're constantly harsh or yelling at your children, you are training them to be desensitized, right? And you don't want them to be desensitized whenever safety's on the line. So I needed to learn how to read my mom's cues so that I could respond appropriately. And your kids also need opportunities to read your cues so they can do the same thing, all right? There's gonna be times whenever you're more permissive, right? You get to pick and choose which hills you wanna die on. We cannot die on every hill. That would be exhausting. So you have to figure out the ones that are most important to you. As Christian parents, a lot of that is a little more clear for us. I think the Bible kind of lays out what are the things that really matter. So that might look like you give your children complete freedom to pick out their outfit, regardless of if it's a burnt orange shirt, neon yellow pants, and camo Crocs. It's got that have stains all over them and holes. Maybe that doesn't have to be a hill you die on. Or maybe you want your kids to have more freedom to play outside and not have as much supervision. That's okay. As your children get older, you're gonna have more of that permissive style because you're gonna give them more autonomy and freedom, which is a good thing because not that we want our children to fail, but we kind of do while they're still under our care, right? Because then we still have that safety net to catch them and to guide them and instruct them. And so we want to give them those opportunities to fail. So all of that to say, your parenting style is going to fluctuate, but what we're striving for is kind of that middle ground that fluctuates based on the situation and all of that. All right, so what are the 4 main parenting styles without looking back? Neglectful. What? Permissive? Authoritarian? Authoritative. All right, we are striving to be, and we like that style because it's high in, and, yes. You guys are so smart. Good job. And you're listening. Some of you. All right. We looked at a scripture. Granted, I didn't go super in depth, but I don't know if you noticed, but I just had so many things that I was like, let's talk about all the things, and I'm trying to tie it all together. So, we see that the authoritative style seems to glean wisdom from the Bible. We talked about some preemptive strategies to implement at home. I encouraged you to allow your children to work through age-appropriate situations. And finally, we acknowledge that your parenting style will fluctuate based on the behavior and needs of your child, as well as the development of your child. Okay, I know that was so much. It's like drinking from a fire hydrant, I get it. There was so many things that I wanted to talk about. You guys have any questions?